Hey there, Harry Hero Tales fans. This is your host, Kim Hegel. I just wanted to give you a heads up that today is a special episode that's going to be ultimately in two parts. Part one is today, and it's my interview with Dr. Leia Barrett. She's a children's book author, has a new book coming out about the odd dog being rescued. She's also an outstanding nonprofit organization fundraiser. I highly recommend you check out both part one and part two to learn more. Part one starts right now. Are you ready to hear an inspirational hero tale about one of our four-legged friends? My name is Kim, and this is Harry Hero Tales. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of Harry Hero Tales, Animals to the Rescue. I'm your host, Kim Hegel. In a very special episode of Harry Hero Tales, we'll be meeting the author of several children's books and a highly accomplished nonprofit specialist, Leia Barrett. Or should I say, Dr. Leia Barrett. Before she joins us, let me share a bit of background on Dr. Barrett. She graduated from the University of Iowa with a Bachelor of Music in Bassoon Performance, along with a teaching certification in music performance in 2006. She continued her education at the University of Missouri at Kansas City, earning a Master of Music in Bassoon Performance in 2008. While attending Texas Tech University, where she was earning her Doctor of Philosophy in Fine Arts in the area of music, she led the education and community engagement of the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra as their Director of Education. She graduated from Texas Tech with her PhD in 2014. Her efforts in fundraising began at the Orlando Philharmonic by raising funds with an annual outdoor concert. Dr. Barrett soon realized that she had a unique talent for raising money for nonprofit organizations, and by 2021, she became the Director of Marketing and Outreach for the Friends of Chamber Music Kansas City, as well as its acting executive director. A spark had been lit, and her capabilities in nonprofit fundraising unlocked. Dr. Barrett also found a talent for writing children's stories that entertain while also educate and inspire. Wanting to find effective ways to engage the communities she was serving, and especially to build an educational outreach for children, Dr. Barrett developed the Goldilocks Quartet, which later became her first book of that same title, published in 2021. In 2023, Dr. Barrett made the decision to step away from her career path that she had been on in order to pursue her passion, which was to use her talents in fundraising to support many nonprofits around the country. During this transitional time, Dr. Barrett also had a wish. She wanted to rescue a dog. Rescuing a dog is not new to Dr. Barrett, but up until then, her career was so busy she didn't have time to take care of a dog. But she had grown up with a family of active rescuers. In fact, her parents had rescued many former Greyhound racers over the years. A strong memory of Dr. Barrett's is of one rescue in particular. Dr. Barrett was only 7 years old, but it stuck with her. Her choice of dog to adopt and bring into her life has had a big impact on Dr. Barrett. Ultimately, this dog has become the inspiration for her latest children's book called The Odd Dog. The book will be part of a series of stories centered around one rescue dog's navigation from the streets to a rescue and ultimately to finding a way to feel at home with a new family. With the book set to raise funds to support rescue organizations and rescue animals around the country, that makes Dr. Barrett's rescue dog a hero, in my opinion. And that's why today's episode is called A Hero Named Layla. Please join me as we welcome Dr. Leia Barrett to Hairy Hero Tales. Well, hey there. Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today.
I know I am. And if you're all right with this, I thought I would go ahead and get started with, of course, as an animal lover, what is top of mind for me. Can you tell us a little bit more about your story with Layla? I gave a little bit in the intro about her status, but I'd love to hear a little bit about her directly from you.
Absolutely. So I grew up with family dogs, but when I started my career, I never really felt like I had enough time to have my own dog. And when I had planned to transition to writing full time, I told my husband, I said, it's my 40th birthday and I only want one thing. I want to have a dog of my own. And so we started looking for a dog who, really fit our personality. And we happened to see a posting about Layla from one of our local rescues. We went and visited her, and the first time I met her, she, put her paws on my heart. So of course, like literally, and so I was hooked, and I knew that she was going to be our dog. She had a little bit of a troubled past, as most rescue dogs do, unfortunately. She was living in Amarillo, and she was in a house with another dog. She got pregnant from that dog in what was probably her first heat based on her age. And the family decided to send her to a kill shelter instead of keeping her and the puppies. And thank goodness, the shelter that was local to Kansas City heard her story, chose to go all the way down to Amarillo to pick her up, brought her back. She had her puppies immediately. And they are all happy and adopted and living in Kansas City, living their best lives. Once she arrived here, she actually was with a foster and got out the door when the foster was coming in with groceries and went on her own epic 18-day journey wandering around Overland Park. Thankfully, Kansas City has a really active trappers network who kind of had her in their sights. She evaded their traps 3 or 4 times, I think. But finally, they were able to bring her home, and she was relatively unharmed. But that was about a month before we met her. And her very quirky nature definitely inspired a lot of the little events that happen in the Odd Dog. Not directly, we take some liberties, obviously, but there's definitely a lot of her personality in that book. And so she's really been, she's been a wonderful dog. Like we definitely have to keep track because she is a flight risk, but she's extremely loyal and just, she's definitely a neighborhood favorite. She has a lot of other moms and aunts and uncles in the neighborhood who like to see her every day.
It's always helpful.
Yes.
So you bring up the book, The Odd Dog. So in the intro, I mentioned that Layla is the inspiration for that. And can you walk me through that inspiration, that timeline, that, here's an idea that I have. How did all that come about, and from Layla herself?
Yeah. So initially, the book was kind of conceived as a all the animals I am kind of book. I don't know how else to describe it except like when I wake up in the morning, I am like a shark because she's like swimming over the bed, and it's one of those things where, if you are an author or you do a lot of creative things, you always have this question of what if. And so there were all these little animals I pictured like she envisioned herself to be, because she has such a unique look. She's a brindle schnauzer, and we still have not gotten a DNA test for her, so we don't really know what she is, though we have fun conjecturing. And so we thought, well, I don't really know. I'm part dog, but I'm also part this and this and this and this and this. And we couldn't quite make that idea work, though I do hope to publish that book someday. But it did kind of get us thinking, like, what about a dog who doesn't really remember who they were? What if, or when we adopt dogs, especially when we adopt mutts, we don't really know their story because they can't tell us. All we can really do is conjecture. And so it was kind of fun to go into her mind and say, okay, here is this dog. Like, it's a little like you're working backwards. Okay, so the parents see a dog who likes to fly off the end of couches, or likes to, kind of mess around in the fish tank, or likes to climb the table. But how did this dog actually get that way? Okay, well, since Odd is a stray in the book, maybe Odd developed survival techniques that they learned from other animals. Like, if they like to climb the table, maybe that's because the squirrels helped them climb trees. If she likes to fly off the end of the chair, which is very concerning to her parents, maybe the birds helped her learn how to fly. And so it really kind of, it's meant to be kind of a fun, whimsical way of saying, like, when you adopt a dog, they're going to have mannerisms that you might not understand. And the parents never really know why these things happen. That's why it's kind of fun to explore them in the book as things that were actually benefits when she was on her own. And then when she goes to her house, they just don't quite work out the way she wants. And so as you get to know a dog, particularly in that first 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months that you know them, they start to show their personality. And a lot of times there are things that you might not like or understand that they do. And your job is to really build that rapport with your dog and find ways to either channel those habits or those mannerisms, or find ways to not put your dog in a situation where they might do something that's going to harm them or others. And really the point is building that rapport with your dog. And so I kind of start that conversation in a fun way in the book, but that was really what I was aiming for as this story started to kind of develop. We wanted to, like, the main point that's a little different. A lot of times when you write a children's book, the main character has issues and then they learn something. And in the Odd Dog, Odd doesn't really learn anything. It's really about the parents seeing what Odd is doing and finding positive ways for Odd to still be themselves, just in a way that is more conducive to living with them, and finding ways that they can still channel those really fun, quirky personality traits that they have.
So in our pre-interview a couple of weeks ago, you actually mentioned something to me that really resonated, and I think for our audience is important to share. Some may already know about it. I had not heard it before. And in that interview, you had mentioned the 3-3-3 rule. And I would love for you to explain what that is and let our listeners know, because I think it will have a very positive impact on what this podcast is all about, which is successful rescue and adoption of more animals, dogs in particular, but I think this rule can probably apply to just about any animal. But can you share that with our audience?
Absolutely. So the 3-3-3 rule was one that I was not familiar with until I adopted Layla, but it is one that is universally recognized by rescues and shelters. It is basically a set of well-known, well-documented behaviors that dogs and probably by extension cats, any kind of animal who is rescued, go through. And not all of these behaviors are positive. And really it's them getting used to living with a new family. So basically there are certain behaviors that show themselves in the first 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months that an animal comes home for the first time. in the first 3 days, dogs especially tend to be really shut down, and so they don't really know their surroundings. They will sleep a lot more. They might not eat. They're not. They tend to just need a lot of personal space. And so for a lot of people, that can be really concerning. They might feel like that dog is not the dog they thought they were getting. And so shelters really want to emphasize that you need to give that dog that space in the first 3 days because they need to decompress. The shelter is a really stressful place. They usually don't get as much sleep as they need. And once you hit the 3-week mark, a lot of dogs will start to show if they're starting to feel at home with you. And so they might show some of their negative quirks. They might show that they're a chewer. They might start pulling on the lead. They're doing these things that, again, pet owners might not be happy about or might not expect. And once you start to see that, it's really important to take your dog, look into obedience training, especially if you see a behavior that you maybe don't want to have in your house, like maybe digging or something along those lines. Trainers will be able to give you positive alternatives, especially, particularly positive reinforcement trainers will be able to give you good alternatives to help your dog channel a lot of those mannerisms in a more positive direction, in a direction that it makes it more livable. Because again, the last thing we want is for a dog to be returned because an owner doesn't understand. They feel like they aren't getting the dog they thought they were adopting. And it's really only after at least 3 months that a dog really feels like they are part of your pack. And so you really can't even judge a dog until you have had it at least 3 months. And so once I read about this rule and started to see how universal it was, it's been something that's been really helpful for me when I have friends who are new to adoption, who say, oh my gosh, my dog is doing this or this or this. And I say, okay, well, how long have you had them? And a lot of times it will be that 3 or 4 week mark. I'll say, okay, so you may not like it that they're a digger, but you can put a little sandbox in your backyard and put a Kong in there and let them just kind of play in there. And then they know that sandbox is where they dig and not in your carpet. Or you might, you might not have given them enough time to kind of decompress. Maybe you need to establish a pretty consistent walking time, or maybe you need to do a little bit of a longer walk. And guess what? That's good for us too. And it
doesn't hurt.
So
That's
much.
True.
It never hurts. and it struck me that the public needed to have more awareness of this rule. And so my next book, the follow-up to The Odd Dog, is called The Odd Dog's Guide to Welcoming New Friends. And that is actually going to be a story that is based on 333 that's also going to have some inserts that teach about it, where it's still a very simple story, but it can be one that kids can refer back to. And frankly, it's not just for the kids, it's for the parents. We really want to teach that patience and empathy. And I'm partnering with as many rescues as I possibly can as this book is coming together to get, their professional insight and make sure that the book has a lot of those reflections, like particularly one of the most important, I just had a humane educator bring this up, where when two dogs are in the same house, the nose-to-nose meet is really important, and making sure you're handling that properly. And that's something that, you keep those dogs separate for a couple days before you even introduce them to each other. And there are just a lot of very subtle things that you can do as an owner that are going to help your dog transition into your house more smoothly and more effectively. And if you are, and awareness is the first step. If you aren't aware that dogs go through these transitions, you're just going to make assumptions and just feel like maybe you're a failure as a dog owner, or this dog just isn't kid friendly. And that's not necessarily the case. They need you to meet them halfway. And I think the 3-3 rule is really good for developing that empathy and understanding especially for new adopters.
Agreed. Yes. I actually, in some of the rescue organizations that I've interacted with over the last few years, They actually have a agreement that they want you to essentially sign off on that says this is the introduction process if you have existing animals that you will follow. And they actually recommend 2 weeks that the animals are kept apart. They can see each other, and maybe slowly over time, if there's a gate in between, they can smell each other, not physically reach each other, but be aware of each other. And it really allows the new dog to decompress, the existing dogs in the home to understand something's changing. And by the time they interact, it's like, oh yeah, well, you've been here for a while. So it can take some of that stress out of it. It can be, if you're prepared and you have that kind of plan or understand a 3-3-3 situation, I think it can take a lot of the stress out of it. So I really appreciate you walking through that. And I think, remembering that and maybe researching for any of the listeners that want to know and are inspired to rescue and how to be better prepared, I would highly recommend reading more about that and maybe even finding a trainer, as you suggested, just to help with mitigating some of the behaviors that, like the odd dog, bring to the home that you don't know the backstory. You don't know what they were experiencing, how they needed to survive and interact with the world around them up to that point. And you're trying to interpret what they're doing. So I think that researching and really understanding and having a trainer that can help with that is critical. So speaking of the Odd Dog, the book, and you touched on it earlier about your experience bringing Layla into your home and some of the behaviors that she brought to the table that inspired the book. You want to walk us through a little bit about the Odd Dog and the story itself?
Yeah, so the Odd Dog starts the day Odd gets adopted by their family. And then it immediately goes back to when Odd was on their own. And they talk about being in the wild. It's clearly a park. And then Odd says, I didn't have anybody to look after me, but thankfully friends taught me important life skills. And so first the birds teach Odd how to fly. And it's kind of a whimsical, the birds, they use a teeter-totter, and the birds clearly have jumped on the teeter-totter, and Odd is flying through the air with leaf wings. And then, the ducks help Odd to swim. And you can see Odd kind of snorkeling through a pond. And then the squirrels teach Odd how to fly, or teach Odd how to climb. And clearly the squirrels are kind of helping Odd, and several of them look very, very anxious. And so then we kind of transition into present day where Odd says, but my family didn't necessarily understand the skills I have. And you can see Odd on the back of a recliner, clearly about to fly off the back of the recliner, and the dad is just kind of reading his paper, and the mom is going, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And you can see a ruined plant in the background. And then of course Odd is swimming through their aquarium, and then is climbing the table to get to hot dogs. And so I will mention that when we were originally conceiving of this story, we had Odd's parents kind of looking angrier, or more angry, I guess would be a better way to put it. And there was just there was one page where Odd just looked completely chastened and sad, and we decided, that doesn't feel appropriate for the direction that we wanted to take this story, which is to basically say, but luckily for me, mom and dad love me for who I am. Like, there is definitely an unconditional love that has to be present in this, and a love and a patience. And luckily they love me for who I am. And then it shows a dog park. If this dog park were real, I would take my dog there every day. But it's a really wonderful dog park. And it shows all of Odd's, all sorts of friends. There's 40 plus dogs in this park, because we had 40 plus friends, family, and fans who wanted to have their dogs featured in the book. Every dog in the book is real. And so, Odd finds a place where he can practice flying. He uses a bouncy ball, and he He can practice his swimming, and this is actually one of the most remarked upon things. I had several critics say anthropomorphized at this point, which I'm kind of going, he's kind of anthropomorphized through the whole book, but okay. But he's, on a floaty with a bunch of other dogs at the pool, and it looks super fun. And then he's trying out agility, and he still isn't great at climbing, but the other dogs are at least helping him. And we open it up to, we have what are called spot illustrations, where there are just single images of Odd, and we have several kind of teaser images, like Odd in a hot dog costume, Odd at an adoption event. And all of these are planned books for the future, or they are kind of, they're little Easter eggs for future. And it ends with Odd saying, it's not always easy being Odd, but it helps when you find where you belong. And clearly Odd has is just happy and healthy, and he's sitting with his mom and dad. So we really did want to have that last scene of just Odd being a dog, basically. So yeah, that's the premise. It actually takes longer to explain than it does to read.
It's an adorable book. It's eye-catching, I think creative, the vision of it. And so I was hoping you could walk our listeners through, and hopefully they're going to reach out and look at the video that'll show, they can see what we're talking about. I highly recommend it. But if you can walk through the illustrations, the design concept that you had for the book, because it is striking. It does stand out.
So, in one word, we really created a book that was sentimental. We have watercolors. I don't know if your listeners remember reading Harry the Dirty Dog, but that was really our inspiration for the color palette. Harry the Dirty Dog is very watercolor based, and they only use greens and yellows and blacks. And it's beautifully drawn. And we started with that very limited color palette and felt like we needed to add just a few other colors to kind of make it pop. And so when you look at the book, you'll see that it has very few colors, and the cover is really only red and black. I mean, yellow and black, excuse me, which incidentally are the colors the dogs can see pretty clearly. We wanted to have colors that dogs can see. And so we had a very limited color palette, lots of watercolors, and it's very shabby chic. The colors are not drawn into the lines. It is as anti-AI as you can get. Like, no computer can draw like that. It takes a really talented artist who normally draws in a more realistic fashion. My illustrator, Shannon, is normally more realistic, but she had a lot of fun trying to make a truly Odd dog. Odd has stick legs and then just looks fuzzy and scruffy, like, the mutts that we all grew up with and loved, who even when they're freshly groomed, they look scruffy. That's just how they look. I've had multiple people who have seen the book ask, what kind of dog is it? And I said, well, it started out looking very much like my brindle schnauzer, but then we decided we wanted to go in a completely different direction. And so we created this kind of little monster dog. And the eyes didn't quite go the right way. It was extremely fuzzy, even fuzzier than this dog. And it didn't quite look like a dog, partially because you couldn't even see a tail. And so I said, okay, we need to make him a little bit cuter, but he still should be a scruffer. And the comment we've gotten so often by that fourth iteration was, he reminds me of the dog I had when I was a kid. And we knew when we got that comment that was the right dog. And so all of the
that was going to resonate. Yeah.
Yes. It has that sentimentality. It's the dog that rescue parents fall in love with, because it is truly one of a kind. And so it was so much fun to make all these real dogs into Odd dogs. what I lovingly call our odd dog squad, so uh, it's fun to make a corgi still look like a corgi, but then he has the thin legs, but maybe they're a little shorter than Odd's. And then you have an Anatolian Shepherd who is just way too long, but he's flying through the air. And then of course there's the little one of my friends had Cavaliers, and she actually showed them like they were competition Cavaliers, and that guy's in the back of the book, and he's just his proportions are perfect, but he still has the stick legs, and so the backgrounds are really lush, and then the dogs are really comical looking, but they still have a lot of very doggy personality, which is interesting because Shannon is not a dog owner, but she had so much fun really transforming these dogs, and we brainstormed a lot of the mannerisms so that, especially in the pages where dogs are in the background, every dog owner can see something their dog does somewhere, and really relate to, like, that dog is my dog, that dog is my dog, and that's been really a lot of fun, just to kind of create this world that Odd lives in, that frankly I would love to live in, if I could.
I know what you're thinking. Heard about the book. How is this going to help? And why is Layla a hero from this? That's why you need to tune in to part 2. Part 2, you're going to learn where the funds from this book are going to go. You're also going to hear some of the amazing work that Dr. Barrett has planned for the next 5 years to raise money for shelters, rescues, and animals in need. Mark it down. Tune in next week for part 2 to learn more. While that only touches the surface of this amazing hairy hero, we have to leave it there for this episode. If you know of a great hairy hero tale and would like to hear it on this podcast, email us at hairyherotales@gmail.com. For more information on this program, visit our website, www.hairyherotales.com. That's TAILS.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is a Southpaw Productions podcast, edited, produced, and hosted by me, Kim Hegel. Opening and closing music provided by Mary Selvage. You can follow her and find out her show schedule at Selvage613 on Instagram, and check out her complete catalog of music available on Spotify, Apple Music, and more. And remember, there are four-legged heroes all around us. Who knows, you might even adopt one. I've adopted many little heroes from some amazing rescue organizations, and I've featured 2 on my website: the All-American Dachshund Rescue and the French Bulldog Rescue Network. If you're looking to rescue your next hero or would like to help with transport or financial support, I highly recommend both of these organizations. Neither are affiliated with this program in any way, but they both have my sincere gratitude and support. Thank you to all of the heroes of the world, and a special shout out to hairy heroes everywhere.